Yes, sir. The Truth, episode 23. Draft time. Special guest, Chris McPherson. Let's go.
What's going on, everybody, man? And welcome to the very first episode of The Truth, where not all Eagle fans agree on everything. And this is definitely the spot where this shit about to go down.
Oh yes, able. Oh yes, I'm stable. Oh yes, no label. Oh yes, you know me. I have only the best. I'm lonely, but damn, I'm going.
This is why we started this, because of you. We started I'm tired of listening to your, fantasy that you living in right now. Always talking about 17-0 until proven otherwise. BS!
I'll be number one, working hella hard until I get just what I want, yeah. Rises like the sun, yeah. Fatal like a gun.
You know what I mean?
Hey, I was pretty close last year. We could have easily won those 3 games.
So I gotta get through it, and the only thing I know is to love what I'm doing.
Right? Did you not beat ourselves those 3 games?
Look, we lost.
Never listen to the
We
no's.
lost.
I just wanna
We
keep
lost. We couldn't win the
moving.
Super
Yeah,
Bowl,
I
but
pray
we
hard,
lost.
it's hard. It's my only medicine. Yeah, everything I do, I'm just being genuine. Yeah, I'm sick of being screwed. Feel my own adrenaline. Yeah, I do just what I do, and I hope you let me in.
What is up? What is up, Eagles Nation? It's your boy BIRDGANG 31, and this is episode 23 of The Truth. How's everybody doing? Hope everybody's having a great day. We brought a special guest on today, guy. My buddy, your buddy, everybody's favorite Eagle, Chris McPherson. How you doing today, my guy? Also, before you start, JC is on his way. He's just running a little late, but how you doing today, Chris?
BG, excellent. Draft is just 2 days away. Can't wait to get things going. I wonder if there's anything special with the fact that this is episode number 23. I'm trying to think of the great Eagles rocking 23. Troy Vincent comes to mind right away. So obviously he wasn't a draft pick, original draft pick of the Eagles, but nonetheless, Eagles got pick number 22 in the first round, 3 picks in the first 2 rounds. We'll see what they got cooking up their sleeves.
So far this offseason, Chris, how has it been for you? How do you think Howie Roseman and the rest of these guys, Nick Sirianni, these guys, and put together the coaching staff and, the team, the offseason acquisitions that we have, like CJ back, White back to the team, a couple other guys we picked up there. How you like it so far?
I think the biggest theme, there's a few of them. One, first and foremost, is taking care of their own, okay, with the guys like Mailata, Dickerson, Jake Elliott, Devontae Smith, all getting contract extensions, well-deserved. And, seeing the guys like Kelsey and Fletch leave, knowing that there's a lot of leadership that's going to be lost in the locker room this season. But I'm looking forward to seeing the guys step up who have been here, who have learned from them, to be able to have that opportunity to be able to take the reins, because you knew those guys weren't going to be here forever. And I think Fletch has done a very good job, Kelsey as well, in recent years, of taking the young guys under their wing and showing them how to be pros day in and day out. So that, and BG, who's coming back for year 15, he's spoken about this, that he wants to leave things better than when he arrived here. And things have been pretty darn good since those guys have all been here in Philadelphia. So I think Howie Roseman, Nick Sirianni, the Eagles front office, they realize how special it is to be able to play for one city, this team, your entire career. And they want to show guys that if you put in the work, if you put in the effort, if you give the fans what they're looking for, we're going to reward you. And we're going to reward you pretty early. That these guys aren't getting to their free agent year wondering if there's going to be some contract issue down the line. The Eagles are saying, look, we value what you brought to the table. We project what you're going to do moving forward. We've seen the great things you've done for this organization. We want to reward you and keep you here for a long time so that you can put all of your focus on football. So that's from the contract extension standpoint. In terms of the new guys, and you mentioned some of them, the Devin Whites, Saquon Barkley, obviously, the Bryce Huff, those guys, and there's been so many new additions to the mix this year. I think the Eagles have done a great job of looking at this team overall and saying we need, even though they were good at running back, they were more than solid at running back. DeAndre Swift obviously was going to be a free agent, and he was a Pro Bowl back in his 1 year here in Philadelphia. They said we have a chance to get Saquon, who is one of the elite backs in the NFL and take that position to another level. And I think across the board, they basically said, we need to make sure that going into the draft, and this is something you hear most teams say this time of year, we just don't want any major holes. We don't want to project that it's obvious we're going to have to pick this position because we are so deficient at it going into this spot. So from a competition standpoint, from a depth standpoint, I think they've just put themselves in a great position where they can say, all right, let's get to Thursday night. Let's see how the board shakes out, and let's see who we're going to want to add to this team, who's going to impact things, hopefully in the short term, but mainly for the years to come. It's finding that strong balance in terms of winning now, okay, which Howie and Nick only want to do, and then winning down the line, that you're not putting all your chips into the table for just one season.
I agree with you full-heartedly. Let's start with the Hassan Reddick. Do you think that was more about money? You know what I'm saying? How do you feel about that whole situation? Or do you think Huff is going to be able to, fill some of those shoes? Not saying he's going to be ready, because I like to look at it like this. Reddick did, 11 sacks last year. Huff did 10 sacks. But Reddick played majority of the time. Huff played 47% of the time, like they say. Is that a disadvantage or advantage? Because, he got the same amount of sacks basically in less than half the time. So you can look at it that way and be like, hey, this guy could possibly, if you give him some more time, produce some more sacks there. Or you can look at it the other way around, where he wasn't good enough to even get that starter type time in New York. What makes you think he's going to be able to do the job here?
To me, I think the Eagles realized the potential. Bryce Huff was someone they had targeted for day one of free agency, and that was very, very high on their wish list as someone they wanted to get here to Philadelphia. And I think primarily you're not just looking at the production he's had, but he's 25 years old. You rarely see pass rush talent reach the free agency market. The Eagles were lucky a couple of years ago with Hassan Reddick to get him, and he was an invaluable part of that team that reached the Super Bowl 2 years ago. The Eagles, I think, are looking at saying they wanted to get younger, more athletic at the position, and they're coming in this season with Huff. You have Nolan Smith, who, again, they drafted in the first round just a year ago. You still have Josh Sweat under contract. BG's holding down the fort. So we'll see what other additions could be coming down the pike. Some of these other linebacker hybrid guys that they've brought in might be able to fill that pass rush role as well. But I think basically the big thing here is I think they're excited about the potential that Huff brings to the table, the age, the production he's had, and still think there's room for him to grow. And they are ecstatic about Nolan Smith going into year two and making that year one to year two leap, where he just didn't get a lot of snaps last season. And I think that's something a lot of people are wondering about is, could some of these young guys have played more last season so that you would know a little bit more about them going into this year? Maybe that's the case, but the Eagles are very high on those guys for coming into this season. And again, you have guys like Sweat, who is a Pro Bowl pass rusher, and what he brings to the table. And he's still only 26 years old. He's still very young, because he was very young when he came out of Florida State. And of course, BG holding things down there, trying to make this more than just a victory lap tour for his 15th season and being able to go out on a high note. He's going to do everything in his power to make sure that he tries to get that ring like you have on your finger there, BG.
Yeah, we're getting another one of these. Let's go.
That's what he wants to come out of here. So,
hey, what's up, Chris? Hey,
JC, good to see you, baby. Thanks for joining the party, man. It's good to say.
Good. Hey, long time no see, man.
Of course.
Hey, always nice seeing you, man. All right, so I don't know what kind of questions Bergen already asked you.
That's pretty much the first one.
Huh?
That was pretty much the first one, really.
Yeah, you're right on time. You're right on time. So.
All right. So now with the cornerback situation, with Rodgers being reinstated, like we probably got around like maybe 8 to 10 cornerbacks on the Eagles roster. Is cornerback a top priority for the Philadelphia Eagles going into this draft?
I think it's always a top priority. I think you look at Howie Roseman's draft history and you can say, all right, if you want to look at the offensive side of the ball, what are the positions that they're going to target and make a priority? And you can go from quarterback, offensive line, wide receiver, and you look at the draft history and it shows there. And then you look on the defensive side of the ball, D-line obviously is paramount for this football team, but cornerback is right there with it. You got to win along the lines and on the perimeter. So, I think the Eagles have 2 very good starters right now in Slay and Bradbury, but they are both 30 years and older. Okay, there is no question about that. Now, you do have a guy like Eli Pick Six Ricks, who the Eagles are excited about going to year two. You have Josh Jobe, who got some experience last season. Isaiah Rogers, look, Howie Roseman said that they did their work on him going into that 2020 draft, and he played with Coach Nick Sirianni in Indianapolis, but he's been out of football for a year. Okay, so it's he'll be able to come to the facility now. We'll see what he'll be able to bring, but it's going to be a question mark. But he's someone who has proven veteran experience on the outside. He's primarily an outside cornerback. You have Tyler Hall, who's a veteran who's going to compete at that nickel spot. That's obviously a spot they want to fortify. Avonte Maddox is back in the fold. So, like you said, JC, there's a lot of guys, a lot of competition right now. But the Eagles are in a good spot where it's not one of these situations where you have to say, hey, we have to go get a cornerback. If their guy that they want is there, or they feel strongly about moving up for a guy, that's great. More the power to them. But it's not something that they have to say, all right, we're just going to say, okay, here's our top 5 corners, and let's see how they come off the board. And the one that's left at 22, that's the guy we're going to get.
And that's how I really feel about the cornerback situation. A lot of these cornerbacks, even some of the ones that we consider the top guys, it's not like the cornerback draft where you got guys going in the top 10. You know what I'm saying? The Surtains and those guys back in the day. These guys, everybody want, but these are guys we're looking at the end of the first round, 22, 17, and a teen somewhere. I don't feel like there's that one elite corner. That one shutdown for sure bet, you know what I'm saying? You plug and play, start that guy, on your football team. I think there's a lot of good cornerback play in here. That's why there's so many in that range. But I don't feel like you said before, we need to develop some of these players. We got Riggs, we got Jobe, we got Rogers coming, we got Ringo, from last year who played some decent minutes.
Forgot to mention him, of course.
All these guys, we have never drafted another one to throw into that mix. I feel like would be kind of an overhaul. Why don't you wait, see what you got in that cornerback room before you move forward and go ahead and try to add another guy to it? And like you said, we got 2 good starters. I think Bradbury will have a bounce back season this year. Because I think Bradbury was missing, safety play behind him. Our safety play was weak behind him last year when everybody's getting hurt. We just didn't have it. Having CJ back, Blankenship will be healthier this year. As we see Sidney Brown will be back this year, we can go and draft maybe, in the later round, one of these safeties to help, bring in some depth on that roster. But I think just having CJ and GJ back and, Blankenship, at the talent like he had the year prior, when he had his all-pro type season would be a big help for him.
Yeah, I think with CJ, you're also missing the competitive fire that he brought. It's not just the playmaking, it's the attitude that he brought. He brought an edge to that defense, and that's definitely something that the Eagles were missing, no question about it last year. But that ball hawking ability on the back end, he tied for the league lead in interceptions, even though he missed like quarter of the season, even a little bit more than that after the kidney injury. So it's not just the playmaking ability and the experience back there, but it's also that competitive mindset, which I think, made him endear himself to the fans so much in that Super Bowl season, just because he just brought an edge of fire to that secondary that, teams, quarterbacks didn't want to throw anywhere on the field because they knew that he was going to be back there. Again, this is the number 1 pass defense, just 2 years ago with Slay, with Bradbury, and with CJ, patrolling the backfield. And obviously the Eagles love what they have with Reed Blankenship, and it's gutting about Sidney Brown that he suffered the injury in the last game the way he did, but he has been ferociously attacking this rehab. And not to play timelines or anything like that, but, he's been, in the workout room every single day doing everything he can so that he can be ready for the upcoming season. So, that it's crazy when you see someone like a Bradbury who was he was an all-pro 2 years ago. He was an all-pro 2 years ago, but you need that pass rush. It's all got to come together, and the defense was, quite honestly, was just out of sync last season. I'm not telling anyone anything new from that standpoint. So you get Fangio in, you solidify everything, you've upgraded the talent at several positions, and we'll see what happens when it's on the ball on September 6th in Brazil.
So let me ask you a question, Chris. What, like, in your mind, right? You're looking at the roster right now. Yes, Howie Roseman, he did some moves in the offseason, like one of the top spinners. What is the biggest need for the Philadelphia Eagles right now on this team?
I don't know if there's any one particular need. I mean, it's pretty much you can go through the roster and kind of say, how is it that they can add competition at certain spots? Okay. I don't know if we want to go position by position, but the Eagles, quite honestly, were one of the more talented teams last season. Okay, everything fell off last season, but they quite honestly have fortified with a lot of talent. Now, there's going to be certainly questions going to the season. You're replacing a Hall of Fame center with Cam Jurgen, and I think the thing about Cam is I think he has the perfect attitude for it, where he's saying, "I'm not Jason Kelce. Okay, I'm going to go out there and be the dang best center I can be, but I know I'm not Jason Kelce. Okay, I'm not going to be this great center. It's going to be this beloved figure and all that stuff. He's following some huge shoes to fill, but I don't think he's feeling the pressure of it, if that makes sense. So I think he has the right attitude there. I think we're all excited to see what does Jalen Hurts do. He went from having that consistency, with the offensive scheme to once again now having to learn under a new coordinator, a new offense, and they're still trying to figure the scheme out and work all that stuff out. But at least you look at the bevy of weapons he has. Again, you've added Saquon Barkley to the mix. You've stabilized the receiving core. You've got great competition for that number 3 spot, okay, with Devontae Parker and Paris Campbell coming in here. So again, I think across the board they are quite solid, and I think that's, again, goes to show why they can go into Thursday night and this whole weekend and say, look, let's focus on the key positions that we want to address, not just for the short term, but for the long term, to make this football team better overall. Because, quite honestly, they've positioned themselves well enough that across the board, there's no one position that you sit there and go, is that the position that we need to address? No, it's like they can, even though they don't have to, they can line up and go play a game today, okay, and be right there with all the best teams in the league. So that's why I think in some ways this is such a draft of intrigue, whereas the last couple of years they had higher draft picks and you're kind of like, all right, you kind of had a good sense of where they were going to go. You don't really have that right now.
Yeah. What do you think about this whole thing? You talk to Jalen Hurts. You hear him talking about he wishes he had more consistency with the offensive coordinator. The quarterback's coach, because it's changed so much. I think under Steichen it was only 2 times. That was the first time his whole career he had back-to-back coordinators. Everybody's talking about if Kellen Moore is this guru, to put this offense where we need it to be this year, then he's probably going to get plugged next year. How do you think that, really wears on a Jalen Hurts? Because we've seen him, it seemed like the first time in any system, it's not that he plays horrible, but he's not his top, actually we've seen when he was in back-to-back, same system. Do you think that's going to carry on to this year where he might struggle a little bit since it is a new system? Or do you think he can, hit the ground running because he is a vet now, he is a pro now, and he should be able to handle it?
Yeah, I think you bring a great point there. The fact that he is still, even though he is a veteran and we look at him as this stoic leader, he is still only 25 years old in his own right. I think you do see some quarterbacks, and I think it's more so at least he has Nick that's consistent there. And this is going to be a collaboration between Kellen Moore and Nick Sirianni. This isn't just like Kellen Moore coming in and doing everything, okay? This is going to be a marriage of the things that they both do. If you were to talk about the head coach, if it was like a defensive head coach and the offensive coordinator was swapping out every year, I think that's a lot more dangerous. But, when you think of the really good quarterbacks in recent history, look at the guys who are at the top right now. You could just go to the guys who won the last 2 Super Bowls. Maybe you could say Patrick Mahomes has had different offensive coordinators going from Bieniemy to Nagy and Kafka and all that, but it's like he's had Andy Reid. Okay, and I think it's very similar in that regard. At least you have the stability of the head guy. But I think there's something to be said for having that long-term consistency with some of the better quarterbacks we've seen, where you have at least, the same voice or at least somewhat, some kind of structure and stability year in and year out. So I can understand why it's difficult for Jalen, especially where there might be a little bit more learning going on this year. But again, it's a combination of, I think what's helped is he's seen what defenses are going to throw at him. So it's having a better understanding of how to attack what he sees when they come at them. And I think a big part is going to be looking at what happened with the offense late in the season and figuring out, okay, Kellen, what can you bring to the table that'll help us mitigate some of these issues that we've had and try to work through those. So, I think it's just trying to help scheme things open for the receivers to make their lives a little bit easier. That's not to say, hey, AJ, I'm going to need you to go win a jump ball. Hey, Devonta, just go win one-on-one, against Deron Bland on a comeback route on a, along the sideline for a touchdown. Like, let's find some ways that we can maybe incorporate a little bit more motion and, get some guys some free releases and, get some easy options there. But again, he has largely the same cast, and you've added a Saquon Barkley. Now, again, there's going to be a difference going from Kelsey to Jurgens, no question. There's going to be some change with the offensive line. But you're adding a Saquon Barkley into the mix who has the receiving capabilities. He brings everything. And I think I don't even know if it's a surprise per se, but hearing all the guys talk about the leadership aspect that he's brought to the table, that it's not like he signed the contract and he's like, all right, I've made it. I'm going to check in here. I'm good to go. Like we've seen sometimes when the guy signs from a division rival and it's like, it's not quite the same. No, he's brought the competitive fire to the workouts early on, and the guys have taken notice. Like, I'm not going to be shocked if he's one of the captains, this upcoming season with, with the leadership that the guys have talked about he's brought to the table so far. So it'll be interesting to see from that standpoint, but he's helped set the tone so far in the early part of this off-season program. So that's been big there. But, I do appreciate and understand what Jalen Hurts is coming from, but I still think he is still a young quarterback. We look at some of the guys, we talk about some of the guys who have been in the league for 2, 3, 4 years longer than him, and they haven't accomplished as much, but maybe have had some more stability. And, Jalen's been able to do what he's done, back-to-back Pro Bowls, runner-up in MVP, taking the team to the Super Bowl, 3 points shy of the title.
Yeah.
And with everything that's gone on around him to this point.
Yeah, like you said earlier when we talked about even adding Saquon, do you think, and for his career, like you said, he is showing that he is that leader right now. You think for his career, having the line, the skill position, the quarterback that they have on the Eagles, that we can see Saquon finally take his claim as being the number one back in the league?
Certainly. I mean, he had what was arguably his most productive season in New York last season, but the team was just so terrible that it kind of got lost under the radar. It didn't matter at that point. He's not going to – it's like you say, okay, well, who are we going to take away from the offense? All right, you're saying we got to focus on taking AJ and Devontae out. Well, okay, then it's going to open things up for Saquon. Again, it's also having someone with the receiving capability coming out of the backfield that the Eagles haven't really had. I remember Miles Sanders, his rookie season, I think caught 50 passes, and we were all like thinking, okay, that's going to be, if you get that like LaShawn McCoy, Brian Westbrook type threat out of the backfield, it's like, okay, that's going to be so hard to stop. But that almost never materialized after his first year. We haven't really had that with the Eagles since. Saquon brings that to the table. I mean, he's a triple threat from a running back position because of his pass blocking, because of his running ability, and the receiving ability. So, again, he can be the guy if you need him to be the guy, but this offense doesn't necessarily need him to be the guy because you've got everyone else that you got to feed. And we forget about Dallas Goedert, who I think kind of gets a little bit lost under the shuffle as well because everyone talks about how great AJ and Devontae and you're bringing in Saquon. Dallas Goedert is still very much a pass-catching threat in this offense as well. So it's one of those it's almost you're going to find out how good an offensive coordinator Kellen Moore is, because it's like, okay, you got all this talent. How are you going to make it all work? So that'll be interesting to see how all of that aspect comes together. But I think definitely you mentioned the aspect of like, can we see Saquon as best? No question about it. I think the Eagles knew that again they've been able to make Miles Sanders into a Pro Bowl running back. They made DeAndre Swift into a Pro Bowl running back with the offense, the offensive line, the scheme, all that. What if we put in a guy who has that number 2 overall, draft pick type talent and put him in this offense and see if we can take that to another level?
Does it change the dynamic? Run first, pass first, or do you think they're going to finally go back to running first, like you need you to set up the pass?
It's still going to be pass first. I mean, that's pretty much what you're seeing from teams around the league. I don't think that aspect of it changes. I think it's just so much more difficult for defenses to be able to put their finger on what are we going to be able to stop week in and week out. That it gives you, if you say go into this game, all right, well, our plan is to attack this part of the field and take advantage of this matchup, but that doesn't go well. You've got something else in your arsenal, your bag to be able to rely upon to say, all right, we can be able to offset that. You're just trying to mitigate as many potential ways that defenses can shut you down. And it's like you want to load up the box and stop Saquon. Well, all right, well, you got Jalen's going to be able to get the ball to his receivers with limited coverage. I think the other thing that'll be interesting to see when you look back at Jalen in his MVP type season, Super Bowl season, and last season was how they attacked the middle of the field. That's what we want to be one of the big things to see how can they, exploit that area of the field. Because pretty much it was like, okay, AJ and Devontae, let's win outside the numbers. It's like, well, that works sometimes, and I think they maximized it to what they could, but it's hard to win, in a sustainable fashion from that standpoint. I think that's one of the things that caught up to them late last season when the wheels kind of fell off. So I think that's the other thing, is not just how you're going to incorporate Saquon, but all right, let's take a look at Jalen. What are some of the things that he did well in that MVP year? What are some of the things that were missing last season? I think the ability to attack the middle of the field, and maybe that's where you're loading up to stop Saquon, and that's where Dallas Goedert takes over. Whether it's the scheme, however it is, they need to find ways to get Jalen options in the middle of the field to take advantage of that this year.
So, real quick, on the defense, right? So I know we brought in Vic Fangio, but there's a lot of people that's still a little concerned because they were saying that we already had that type of defense with Sean Desai and Jonathan Gannon. How much different do you see this defense is going to be under a Vic Fangio, the guy that I guess that developed this type of defense that other people is trying to run? We got the chef itself, and not no sous chef, but this is the chef himself. So how different do you see this defense running?
I think the biggest thing is, can he maximize the talent and make everything cohesive? And I think that's a big thing that was lacking, where you look at the run defense from being able to play the gaps. I think the pass rush was out of sync. In terms of what you're going to see in the coverages, they are going to be similar to what we've seen in the last couple of years. But we've seen that be successful. We've seen it work, certainly at times. It's not like that it doesn't work. But I think that's just the philosophy that Nick Sirianni likes to have out of his defensive coach. But I think having someone who, again, and to your point, Jason, it's a great one, that it's not the guy who learned from, it's the guy who is the one who's developing and has evolved it over the years. It's not going to be the same as he had done, 20 years ago. He's obviously followed the game and seen how it's developed in due time. So I think what they've done a good job is stabilizing the talent at all three levels of the defense. A lot of people talk about linebacker, and they're still very high in Nakobe Dean. Obviously the injury thing is going to be something to watch with him. But you've got Devin White, and, I love the quotes from Nakobe. It's like, well, can you play the will? Is he going to play the mic? And it's like, we're going to go ball. All right, we're going to go ball. We'll figure out wherever you put us, we'll ball. I mean, they haven't gotten that far into, the coaches aren't at the point, until, next week where they can start meeting with players and stuff like that. It's still the very early ramp up weightlifting session of the offseason program, just getting things going. But, Ben Sumer was someone who stepped up late. It showed that athletic ability and was able to make plays. And again, you brought in some of these veteran guys who have played in the league, have played in some big games, who I think are good fits for what Vic Fangio wants to do. Wants to be hybrid, wants to be flexible. And I think he's brought in some pieces. The Eagles have brought in some pieces that'll be able to help him be successul from that. Not just from a talent standpoint, from a depth standpoint as well. That's going to be a big thing to watch. But I think the biggest thing is the cohesion between the pass rush and the pass coverage was just off last season, and that's what caused the defense especially down the stretch, it just cost the defense too many times, and it got to the point where it's almost like you went into the games knowing, all right, if the defense goes down, gives up a touchdown the first drive of the game, it's just, you felt the snowball effect going to happen, and that's what you were seeing in these games late in the season. So I think, from obviously the respect that Fangio is going to have, the leadership that he's going to bring, the experience that he's going to bring, the understanding of the scheme, find the ways to maximize the talent. I think it's going to be the right across the board. It's going to allow Nick to obviously, be focused on, everything as a whole, but he can obviously focus more on the offense and know that the defense is going to be in solid hands. Someone of Fangio's ilk running the show there.
Nice. Do you think the Eagles going to go back over to the offense? Do you think that the importance of a third receiver, even though we do got a Dallas Goedert, is important for the Eagles? If you look at when Kellen Moore was coaching of the Cowboys, Gallup had 1,000-yard seasons there when he did have, he's coming in the slot when he had Lamb and Cooper over there. Do you think having that third receiver, and do you think that guys on our team, out of Parker or Campbell, one of these guys, or do you think the Eagles are going to use a high draft pick and really solidify that position, considering the previous years, Kellen Moore has really used that third receiver?
Yeah, I mean, obviously wide receiver is very important for the team. I think what you've seen with Campbell is someone who they liked going into that 2019 NFL draft. He has that speed element that, they lost with Quez Watkins. Quez Watkins, who showed so much promise early on, was just inconsistent these last couple seasons. And, so he's off with the Steelers right now. Devontae Parker had his best game of his career against the Eagles in that Miami upset. I think it was the 2019. I think that might be the 2019 season in its own right, where it went off for like 150 and 2 touchdowns. He brings a more physical element to the position. So I think that's going to be something to watch. And I'm not going to rule out Britton Covey, because he's someone who is, has that elusiveness with the ball in his hands. What happens if he gets some more looks in there? So the other thing is going to be, do the Eagles maybe say, okay, if Campbell or Parker, let's say, stabilize the other outside position with AJ, could you see Smitty move around more? And with that route running ability, with his ability to get maybe free releases off the line out of motion, do you utilize him in that element to be able to free him up to get some touches there? So I think there's a lot of options here for Kellen Moore to play with. And to your question, could another receiver be drafted? I certainly wouldn't rule it out, because I certainly understand the depth. And you say to yourself, okay, you do have a lot invested already in the position. You have AJ and you have Devontae, both locked up, both commanding premium money at their positions, but at the same time understanding how important it is and trying to give Jalen Hurts as many options as possible. But at the same time, you're looking at this offense now, and you've got, 2 top-tier wide receivers, arguably the best wide receiver duo in franchise history. You've got running back. You've got a very good tight end. You've got a top-notch offensive line. There's already a lot in store here. But definitely you don't want to get to a situation where, if you were, like we saw at the very end of last season, AJ or Devontae gets hurt, who's going to be out there for you at the wide receiver position? So the Eagles definitely want to make sure that they're covered in that regard.
You like any of these young guys? Because we're not going to get none of the top ones. Obviously, we're not getting Marvin Harrison Jr. We're not getting the dude from Washington. But what about some of these guys? Because I went to Senior Bowl and also seen some of these guys like Brendan Rice, to get Jerry Rice's son in here. What I'm saying, who had a great year, great season with USC. Get Lab McConkey. Get what's it, McCaffrey's brother, Luke Wilson over here. Luke McCaffrey over here. Like, get one of these caliber guys and throwing them in by using like an early draft pick on them.
We'll see. I don't really have any preference, so we'll see what the Eagles bring in here. But no, I'm completely open to, if they feel like that's the best way to utilize the resource here and just add more weapons to this offense, and say, Jalen, let's go get 40 a game, and let's go do this. So certainly wouldn't shock me again, because you look at the amount of receivers, Howie has been willing to use draft capital on. It's not a position they shy away from. Okay, they've got some very good ones in the house right now with AJ and Devontae, both taken care of, both being paid among the best at their position, and deservedly so. And I think both guys just have the right mindset too, because AJ's a dog, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the comparisons to T.O. from a playing standpoint, I mean, I just admire what T.O. did in that 2004 year when he was here, how he was just a freaking Adonis and just an absolute beast on the field. I mean, AJ's the first player since that we've seen anything remotely close to that. And Devontae, you know, all the talk about him coming out of that draft after he won the Heisman was the size, you know. And I was listening to his introductory press conference, and the second question was, well, how much do you weigh now? You know, it's like, and like, you know, nobody's asking that anymore.
Yeah, said he weighed 190. I doubt that.
No, I don't think anywhere close to 190. But regardless, nobody's asking that question now because he's missed one game. And honestly, if that game, that end of season game against the Giants, was a playoff game, I think Smitty finds a way to play. That's just the type of gamer he is, and he's won as a receiver in every way possible. It's not like he's a guy who has to be, you know, manufactured touches for. You know, he can go out and win one-on-one. He can win along the sideline. He can win contested balls. He can win with his route running ability. He does it all from the position because he's such a great route runner, and he has tremendous body control and terrific hands. So that might almost be as impressive, if not more, because I think you look at the size and say, how's this guy going to win at the next level? The thing is, I think he helped open the door for some of these younger receivers coming out to say, well, that worked with Devonta Smith, maybe. And again, Devonta Smith, and in some ways, Devonta Smith blossomed later in his college career, even though he had that big national championship winning overtime touchdown early on. But typically,
Waddle. Yeah, Waddle
and obviously because of all the receivers that were coming out there, no question. But still, typically guys that don't emerge until like their senior year don't typically translate as well to the next level. But probably because he was in that Alabama room with all those great wideouts, that's like, okay, you know, Judy, Ruggs, and you mentioned Waddle, all those guys, like, all right, that's probably why it took him a little while to develop, because he looked at the competition in front of him, and it's like, those are some first-round tier caliber guys right there with him. So, but, I mean, getting back to overall, it's Eagles are very good right now at the wide receiver position. But, again, that's why if you were told me, you know, outside of specialists at this point, you know, the one thing maybe is, do they have an eye on someone who maybe is a kickoff returner? Okay. And, you know, from that standpoint, that could be the possibility there, because the kickoff rule is going to, you know, impact things this year. So it'll be interesting to see with teams across the board how they address the kickoff return position. Isaiah Rodgers does have some experience. He did have a kickoff return for a touchdown as a rookie in Indy, so I know he brings that element to the table. So that's something to watch. But yeah, that's why some of this is going to be fun to see how the teams are adjusting to that. But you know, again, like I was about to say, is outside of specialists, it's like kind of like I can understand if the Eagles add any position, because maybe you're just looking at short-term depth, or you know, someone that they eye down the road developing into a really, really good player, but they just don't want to pass up on, and they're willing to say, all right, we can stash him for a year and then let him grow and develop into what we think he can be.
So offensive line, all right, Lane Johnson, right? He's going into his 11th season, obviously. So almost every year you might as well pencil him to miss a couple games. So, I mean, do you think that the Philadelphia Eagles should kind of like prioritize drafting a right tackle, or do you think that Steen, you know, I mean, it's rumored by us fans that he might just move to right guard, you know, or do you see Eagles drafting another right guard for that position?
That's interesting. I mean, so right now, I mean, Cam Jerkins kind of let the cat out of the bag when he talked about the offensive line locker room setup, and that's been pretty much how the case has been. So it's very interesting that Steen has already been placed in that right guard spot. And Steen showed a lot of promise. He showed a lot of power in the run game as a rookie last season. Cam Jurgens was so technically sound. I mean, he won the job, and quite honestly, I don't really think it was much of a competition at the position. But Tyler Steen was a third-round pick a year ago, and has that guard tackle flexibility. So it's someone who, a lot of people are saying, well, if the Eagles draft an offensive lineman high, well, he could play right guard and then move out to tackle. In theory, yes, you hope that works. It's not that easy with every single player. Yeah. But maybe they are thinking that Steen is going to be the guy, long term. Landon Dickerson, I think, was originally drafted as the Jason Kelce replacement, but he just played so well at left guard that we'll just keep him there with Mailata. That's said, and then we'll just draft the next guy next year. So I don't put anything past Lane because he's still playing at the top of his game. He still has the fire and the competitive willpower to want to be the best, which is so impressive to see going into his 11th season. Even though he could have a WWE career, as we saw with his WrestleMania maybe. But nonetheless, I think that's one of the positions that a lot of people, the mock draft communities, figure, okay, Eagles are going to think about the long-term answer at right tackle. But I feel like it also goes back to Jason Peters. I think a handful of guys were drafted to be Jason Peters' replacement, and Jason Peters nah, bud, you can sit on the bench and go elsewhere. There's not going to be a spot for you. And it seems like it could be like that with Lane for a bit here. But yeah, certainly that is a possibility that the Eagles may say, okay, let's draft an offensive lineman high, because they are want to do that regardless. Even though they have the depth every year, it seems like they're taking an offensive lineman within the first or second day. And maybe it's not even to say play guard right away. Maybe you say Steen's your right guard, but let's just have a solid backup answer at right tackle, because we go back to the Jets game last year. You mentioned JC, the risk of Lane missing time. You go to last season when Driscoll had to go in there, and Driscoll's had some good backup reps in the past, but he didn't play great that day against the Jets. And maybe you just want to say, and Driscoll, he moved on in free agency. Maybe you want to say, all right, we want a guy who we know, if we feel really good about Fred Johnson being your backup left tackle, maybe we want a guy we want to feel really darn good about being your backup right tackle. And we're perfectly fine with that if that's his role for the next 1-2 years before Lane steps aside.
Or even if you like Steen, I like this Powers Johnson, 328, 6'3", big, mauling center. Maybe if you do like Steen, he can play that tackle spot. You room him there, you give him competition with Powers Johnson for that, guard spot, and then you let it play out from there. Like if Johnson wins, then you can move Steen out to be that backup right tackle until Lane gets done.
Yeah, the Stoutland's he's a guy who will say, he'll tell you what he wants. He'll tell Howie, these are the guys that I want. He has his process of trying to serve. You go back to Lane Johnson, Stoutland was told, find our tackle of the future. It was basically told going into that draft in 2013, look, find us our guy. I don't care who it is. That was, I think, what the Eric Fisher draft. Deion Jordan was the edge guy who went one spot before to Miami. I can't remember the other offensive lineman who went before Lane, but Lane was the guy he wanted. So the Eagles were thrilled when he lasted to the fourth pick. They sprinted to the table to put that name in because that was the guy who Stoutland wanted. So Stoutland's got. And that was Stoutland's first year with the Eagles. That was the first draft with the Eagles. He came with Chip Kelly. So if you think he had that kind of sway then, think of what he's got now after developing the guys that he take a guy who never played and is now doing a goodwill tour in Australia, touting his love of the game of football and what it's done for him and his family.
We got legacy in this draft. Are there any legacy members you want to see join the Philadelphia Eagles? You got Jeremiah Trotter Jr., which I really love, and I think he's one of the top linebackers. I think we can get him in the second round for sure. He should be there, or even if we can maneuver to get a third round pick if we don't get him in a second, somewhere in that range. I think that's probably where he'll go, probably like late second or early to middle third, or even like Vondresweat. No one's really talking about Josh Sweat's brother is in this draft, and he's a really good DT over there in Texas. You know what I'm saying? He had some really good year this year. He had a great Senior Bowl. He was getting double teamed every single practice I seen him in when he was down there. And, you know, that'd be his brother. We have two brothers on the same defensive line playing at the same time. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, it's really, it tells me how old I am that I was covering Jeremiah Trotter's dad. And you know, that this has hit home in recent years with Runyon's kid who was drafted a couple of years ago. I think in 2020, Asante Samuel Jr. was drafted a few years ago. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, those are the guys that, you know, when I was first covering the team, those are the guys I was covering. I'm like, now I'm covering their kids. That tells you how old I am. So that's more of that than anything else. I mean, the Trotter story. What's that?
You don't look a day over 20.
Thank you. Thank you, JC. Appreciate it. But I mean, the Trotter story would be outstanding, because I think it's, and Howie touched on this, it's those guys grew up here and they know what it means to play here. Okay, so they know that you're not giving no lackadaisical effort. Jeremiah Trotter will take his son out and make sure
At halftime.
he will make sure he lets him know that you're not going to wear that name on the back of the jersey. You're not going to have your dad be in the franchise Hall of Fame and go up there and stink up the joint or give any kind of half-hearted effort, knowing what these fans deserve. So Trott's one of my favorite guys I've covered throughout this time here. The time here with the Eagles, and it'd be a phenomenal story. It would be a phenomenal story to have his son come here. The only thing that you would caution against is playing at a position that is such under the microscope right now for fans that they will look at him and think that he's going to be the answer, and it's like,
yeah,
you're almost expecting him to come in and walk on water on day one, and magically zap the quarterback to fumble the ball away every time they take a snap. And you would just caution for these unrealistic expectations to get out of hand if they were to select them.
But I feel like Howie did it right by getting a guy like White, who was a former All-Pro. You know what I mean? He was like Defensive Player of the Year or something like that. Just a couple years back, this guy is a stud. Yes, he had a down season last year, but I feel like, in a new organization, contract year, he can come out and ball out and be that All-Pro type linebacker again. When you're an All-Pro linebacker, it's not something you lose. You know what I'm saying? You don't lose the talent. You might have a certain situation that make you not play as well. I don't know what's going over there in Tampa Bay, but I feel like he's going to go back to that. So now you got him, you got your guy, Dean, that you want to come out, and you've been hoping would play good. So if he did have a Trotter come in, it's like he's a third backer that you're looking to perform, because you're expecting White to perform, to his old ways. You're expecting Dean to come out and do something. And now you got a guy like Trotter that can come in and just kind of just throw that axe around.
Yeah, no, BJ, I think that's a valid way to look at it. I mean, Devin White's a heat-seeking missile. Okay, yeah. And the athleticism is still there. I think the Bucs, when Devin White was sidelined last season, they were getting a little bit more consistency, and I think that's what caused White to kind of fall out of favor. And I think White was hopefully to an extent humbled by it. He talks a good game. Okay, when he had his introductory press conference, you weren't thinking he's lacking for confidence whatsoever, but you're hoping that he was humbled by what happened last season. But this was a guy who was an anchor of a Super Bowl winning defense down there in Tampa Bay. He brings the leadership credentials. Him and Nakobe Dean, from a leadership standpoint, are going to be phenomenal on that side of the ball. So that aspect of it is going to be great to see. And maybe you're right. Maybe you bring in a Trotter, and then it's okay. You don't have to be the guy. But we know how the storylines are going to get handled if all of a sudden you're drafting the son of a franchise Hall of Famer who plays a marquee position that fans love so much here in Philadelphia.
What about Vondresweat? How about that, to have both of those guys on the defensive line this year? Plus, we do need another defensive tackle now that Fletch is gone. He's a big mauler type, nasty defensive tackle. I think him and Murphy both were great at Texas last year. To say Murphy's more your sack getter guy, and he was more of the run stopper guy because I think he's a little bit bigger than Murphy. How would it feel to how would you feel about bringing a guy like him in?
I mean, I would love the storyline. I think the forgotten guy at defensive tackle though is Milton Williams. Okay, he is the veteran in that room right now, and the Eagles are looking to him to be okay. Obviously, that Jordan and Jalen were the first round picks, and you're expecting Jalen to have a monster second season and all that. You're expecting Jordan to build upon what he was able to do last season, but Milton Williams has been quietly, sneakily productive each last couple seasons, and I think there's a humbleness to his game that kind of flies under the radar that doesn't go unnoticed by the coaches or his teammates. He's a guy that comes in, puts his head down, does the work, and doesn't get the accolades, doesn't get all the flash or anything like that Jalen Carter does. That's fine with him. But I definitely think there is a respect in this organization for what Milton Williams does bring to the table. So. Fletch was still playing very good last season, but he was not, 2016 to 2018, all decade, Hall of Fame level Fletch last season. But he was arguably one of your most consistent starters on that side of the ball. He was still a very good starting quality defensive tackle. The problem is we think of Fletcher Cox as being here, and maybe he was like, just a step below that, but was still really, really an important part of this defense last season. So, but yeah, I think you have a really, really solid three. And, if you want to bring Josh Sweat's brother into the mix, you have a great storyline there for me to write about. But so it's I think I forget where I read this, but you look at what those top defensive tackles are getting paid, and it's like, it's so hard to find those elite guys. Okay, it's hard to find those guys at the top of that list. Whereas there's a little bit more depth when it comes to the edge rusher position. It's really the depth. The depth is stronger at the edge when you talk about the elite guys. But if you want a quality defensive tackle, that's why the Eagles prioritize getting Jalen Carter. Okay, the Eagles, I think, basically woke up last year on night one of the draft and said, we're coming out of this with Jalen Carter, come hell or high water. And we're finding a way to make it happen. Now, some of it, I think, obviously was figuring because of what happened off the field, he was probably going to slide a little bit. But Howie Roseman was going to find a way to make sure that Jalen Carter was wearing midnight green by the end of that night, because they know what having an elite player at that position is going to do. But you still have to have solid options, and that's what you have with Jordan Davis. That's what you got with Milton Williams. So, again, premier position the Eagles will prioritize, and wouldn't be surprised to see them add depth there, but they have three very, very good ones, even after losing someone like an all-timer in Fletcher Cox.
All right, my last question for you is Nick Sirianni. A lot of fans wanted him gone after this past season. Not me, but this guy over here. A lot of fans, and it's understandable because he doesn't call plays. People say he doesn't call plays. What does he do if you don't call plays? And now you bring Kellen Moore, to run the offense. How much input does Nick Sirianni going to have into this offense, or is it just straight Kellen Moore and I guess the rest of the offensive coaches?
I mean, he's still very much involved. This isn't like Kellen Moore come in and we're just going to give you the playbook and you can call what you want. Nick Sirianni has an idea, a formula, for a vision for how he wants the offense to look, and he's going to work with Kellen Moore. And obviously, Kellen Moore's not taking this job if he's not going to be able to put his imprint on it. Okay, there's no question about that. But Nick Sirianni is also sitting back and just saying, we got to, giving you the keys, and we're going to let you ride here. Nick, I mean, there are several coaches who are in similar roles to Nick Sirianni that they don't have. They're more CEO types. Okay. Think about the jobs you have. Does your CEO do every single little thing in the organization? No, he makes sure that everything is running at a high level. He's making sure that, you talk about the framework, the architecture of the programs that are being designed, the practice schedule, all that thing. there's going to be a revamping this year. Okay. And even you could tell from these early like workouts that the guys are doing on the field, things seem like they're already a little bit tougher than last season. So there's definitely going to be that semblance here where I think the coaches saw this team drop off the way they did in the second half of the season. I know a lot's been made about the practice schedule and keeping guys healthy, and there's certainly validity to that, but I definitely think there's also something that the coaches say, we need to get back to football. We need to get these guys in position to be able to play this long stretch, because we're not going to look to say, oh, let's get to February one year and, okay, say the next season, oh, well, things didn't go right. They want to be playing into late January and February every year. So that's all coming under Nick Sirianni. So he has to have the vision for not just the offense, and obviously he's very much invested in the offense, and that's what wins in the NFL, and that's obviously so uber important. That's what he was brought here for. But it's really his vision for how he wants to run this entire franchise, because, again, Howie Roseman, okay, look, Howie Roseman selecting the players. He has his hands all over that. He has his hands in several facets of the football operations department, the training staff, strength staff, all that stuff. All that's under his purview. But, Nick Sirianni is coming in and saying, okay, well, how are the practices going to look? How are these schemes going to look? He has a vision for how he wants his team to play, and it's his job to communicate that through the coaches, to get that detailed into the players, to be able to see that come to fruition on Sunday. So the way the team performs this season is going to be on him, and he's going to be under the microscope. But you can't discount a guy who got you to the playoffs 3 straight years, first 3 years on the job, got you to the Super Bowl in year 2. I mean, I forget what the winning percentage he had going at one point, but he's still the winningest head coach right now in franchise history. So certainly, okay, it's like, well, he's had the talent. Well, you look at all the great coaches, and yes, they had talent to work with. Of course, it's being able to maximize that talent and see that all the way through. So I certainly think the Eagles, Jeffrey Lurie is very, very good at not getting caught up in the emotion of the moment and realizing, okay, at the end of the season, you need to step back, because if you just go by how the season ended, okay, it could be positive or negative. It could work for you or against you. He's very good at, and he's been around long enough to say, let me take a step back. Let's see how everything played out, what got us to this point. And then, Nick, what's your plan moving forward? Okay, that's what it's going to be. That's what it really comes down to. What is your plan to get this thing turned around? And Nick Sirianni, being the CEO, was able to sell his vision to make this happen. They've brought in a top-notch coaching staff. We'll see the impact that they have, but you look at the experience that they bring to the table. You look at what Moore's offenses have done. You look at Fangio's defenses have done over the years. They've set themselves up quite nicely. Howie Roseman did his thing in the player personnel side, getting talent around him to make sure that they had depth at all the key positions. We'll see what they come out with on Thursday night and this weekend in the draft. But, I think the Eagles certainly made the right decision, because if you get to a point where, Doug Peterson was fired just a couple of years after winning a Super Bowl, Nick Sirianni is out the year after taking the team to the Super Bowl, there would start to be a lot of questions being asked, a lot of questions about the stability, and you start to get to a point where, like, who's going to want to come here knowing that I could get to the playoffs in 3 straight seasons. I can get you get MVP play out of my quarterback and get you on the cusp of a Super Bowl in the second year, and I'm out because I won 11 games and made the playoffs. Like, it was even. The thing was, even during this, even when they were 10-1, okay, it was getting to the point where it felt like being at like a Georgia, at an Alabama, where it's like, if you don't win by 20 points, okay, it'll feel like a loss. If you get into that point during last season, but it's still, at the same time, it's like, it is really, really hard to be a consistent winner, and there are so many teams that would just yearn for the 1 year. And Nick Sirianni has gotten this team to this point. Now, he's facing his most difficult challenge of, okay, the way this season ended, how are you going to be able to bounce back from that? And but I think even losing guys like Fletch, even losing a guy like Jason Kelce, there's enough leadership in the locker room. There's talent in the locker room that this team can separate itself from what happened then and get restarted here in the offseason and work towards getting back to the way that they had been when they made a huge run to the Super Bowl and then won, 10 of their first 11 games to start the 2023 season.
Did you think it was premature last year when he switched to defensive coordinators? Because we were only 10-1 at that point. To do that, in the middle of a season, do you think that's kind of premature as a coach? He kind of overreacted with what's going on because the pressure of Philly, like you said, the pressure of Philly, you hear the fans barely winning. You want to make a big splash, and he obviously did not make the right decision because that was horrible.
Yeah, I thought a lot about that. I mean, he certainly must have felt like at that point, that's the one move I can make that's going to salvage things.
Yeah.
And you can I'll compare it to the Philly special in the Super Bowl. Okay, the boldest call of them all. 4th down, you're facing the vaunted Patriots in the Super Bowl, and we all know what happens. We all know Nick Foles pulls it off, gets a touchdown, and the Eagles win, and that play is one of the greatest in NFL history and all that. What if that play didn't work out? And I get that it did, but that's always that thin line where if that doesn't work out, how are we looking at that? That's the reason they lost the game, because they made a dumb call to try a trick play at the goal line. I think, and not really knowing personally what the situation was with Desai and the players behind the scenes, but Sirianni must have felt that it got to the point where I've got to make a move here. I've got someone who I trust, who I think is a veteran coach, in Patricia, that I could say, let's turn it over and see what we got. And probably was feeling, worst case scenario, things fall out, but maybe Sirianni was like, this is probably where it was heading anyway. And at least going to try to salvage something while we're in a winning position instead of wait till the wheels start falling off and then all of a sudden everything really comes undone. So obviously he'll tell you it wasn't the right call, but maybe at the end of the day, they just didn't have a better option at that point and realized they needed to go get an upgrade in the offseason. And I think they've done that, getting Vic Fangio in here.
Hey, thanks for your time, Chris, man. Make sure you guys go follow Chris over there on Twitter, right? That's what you're on. You're on Twitter. You're not on YouTube. You're only on Twitter, right?
Twitter, CMAC Eagles. You can find me there. I saw some of the comments. You guys toned it down for tonight. So it's funny. You watch the intro, and JC looks like he's ready to put on a helmet and go run through a brick wall. So
JC only really gets mad at me.
Hey, he's so unrealistic.
One more before we get out of here.
Yeah.
Jason Kelce, we know is a Hall of Famer. Jason Kelce, we know is a Hall of Famer. Definitely going to be an Eagles Hall of Famer. Now, Fletcher Cox, I believe that for sure Eagles Hall of Fame, but do you see him being NFL Hall of Famer?
He's got a very strong case because one of the things that they look at, and he has the Pro Bowls, he has an All-Pro, he was All-Decade. All-Decade and winning a Super Bowl are two really, really good things to have in your hat. And I mentioned this earlier, that period from 2015, 2016 through 2018, Aaron Donald and Fletcher Cox were, maybe throw Geno Atkins in there, but those were the three best defensive tackles in the game for a period of time. Fletcher Cox had double-digit sacks as an interior lineman. The resilience he had, his durability, the word we're looking for, he had was out there. He's got a lot of good things in his favor, but I think the all-decade one, that's usually pretty strong when it comes to the voting standpoint. But he was a very, very good, very consistent player during his time here. It's not the sexiest of positions. So if you can make yourself stand out at that spot, and I think most, during those years when teams were game planning the Eagles, it was we got to start with 91. We got to make sure that he does not mess up this game, that he doesn't just crush the pocket and give us no chance to get anything going on offense. So he was that type of player for several years. So he's going to have a very, very strong case. It's going to be interesting to see, right off the bat, you're going against Aaron Donald 5 years.
Yeah.
That same year.
They'll throw two in at the same time.
Yeah, so
but I feel like he might be like a second ballot. Maybe that second.
Which again, like that's a bad thing. It's almost like, okay, it's not good enough to be Hall of Fame. Oh, well, if you're not first ballot, it's like you're nothing. Like, I think Deion was the one who I think argued there should be a Hall of Fame for the Hall of Fame. Well, then what are we doing here? And you guys are letting too many people into a mission. I get the point he's trying to make, that like, okay, there should be like the GOAT section or something like that. But it's like, that's what the Hall of Fame is supposed to be, just the best of the best. So, I think he's got a very, very, very good case. But it'll be interesting to see how that discussion goes 5 years from now, when obviously Aaron Donald, who's a no-brainer, no doubt Hall of Famer. But does Fletcher Cox get any traction going in at that time as well?
All right, man. Well, thank you very much again for your time. We'll let you get back to your duties, and thank you for coming on to Truth with me and JC Sports Talk, man. JC, any last words for you, buddy?
Nah, man. Hey, Chris. Hey, I appreciate you, man. Always, man. I do gotta get you back on again. I miss you, man. Hey, you was part of my family, and then I dropped off. But don't worry, Chris. We gonna do it again, man.
We back.
That's what you always say. That's how family always is. Family always says, "Oh yeah, we're gonna get together soon," and then it's like 6 months later. Oh yeah, didn't we say that before? So, but it's gonna be Eagle season soon enough here. So, and I don't know. I know obviously BG, you're not here right on the East Coast. The other teams aren't really helping Philly right now, so they might need the Eagles to serve as a bit of a distraction. So. Even though the first game is still months away. So now look, let's enjoy the draft, see what happens, see what Howie's got rolling up his sleeve, and now we'll definitely jump on and chop it up a little bit down the line. All right.
Oh, all right, buddy. Do you know when the Eagles ticket for Brazil dropped? I bought my plane ticket already for Brazil, by the way. So I'm just waiting for the Eagles ticket. So I mean, like, any rumors when those tickets are gonna?
I have not heard on that one. I know that on our website that we have the spot where you can reserve your spot for them. That's true, but I think those are like the those party ticket travel plan type deals. Those are available if you go to PhiladelphiaEagles.com right now. But I've had people asking me the same question, and I've been waiting for an answer. So it's one of those, when I hear type deals, like I'll let you know, but I've not heard anything on those tickets yet per se. So I'm sure that's all going to come really soon. But the thing is, it's like a 40,000 seat stadium. It's not as big of a stadium as a typical stadium. So we'll see how it is. Okay. Right. But you're already going, man. I was gonna say, I don't even know if I'm gonna.
Right now, like that, he done busted out the ticket already. He already got the ticket.
I'm sorry, already got the ticket. We already bought our plane ticket to Brazil. Me and my family. So I mean, there, man.
You're going. Right, it's the thing. I've had, people I've talked to have said they want to go. You want to go to Brazil? Obviously, Brazil is like a funnest gonna be place. Yeah. Why not go there with a bunch of Eagles fans, that are going to take over the place at the same time? So that aspect of it is going to be fascinating. It's going to be a wild time. It's going to be a wild time. So, and against the Packers, and the Packers game, it's fun. The two teams that they got playing this game, the matchup with Jalen and Jordan Love. I mean, the Packers were exciting last season. It's a hell of a way. Friday night football to start the season. So it's insane. It's insane. So it gives us something to look forward to.
Ridiculous prices right now to fly there.
Not really. Nah, not really. It's just like, do you want to sit comfortable for 13 hours plus, or do you want to sit like with everybody else like this? You pick comfort.
I'd rather be like that. Hey, scoot over. EAGLE. All right, guys. Hey, we will be covering the draft. We will have a call on a draft this Thursday night. Make sure we're going to do a special episode of The Truth Draft Edition. We're having a call-in show. Make sure you guys tune in. I'll be at work. JC's going to start off the show, but I definitely be there. And we definitely going to watch together and see who the Philadelphia Eagles bring in. Because I got one guy that I want. That's Latu from UCLA. Hopefully we can get him somehow. But other than that, you know what I'm saying? You guys have a great rest of your night. Thanks for joining us. And hit that like, hit that subscribe. Go around to all destinations, hit that like, hit that subscribe for us. And fly, Eagles, fly.
Go Birds.
Go Birds.
And we out. Peace.
What's going on, everybody, man? And welcome to the very, 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 very first